This is Common Sense Radio. Straightforward and no excuses.
All right. Come on now.
This is the Steve Gruber Show.
Call me crazy.
Oh, yeah.
What I said was perfectly right and spot on accurate.
Boy's got a mouth like a cannon, always shooting it all.
Stop. Yeah, stop. I mean, you're way off script.
Got it in me. Gonna quit until it all comes out.
Hey, boy!
Been a long education.
Yeah, you know, it's not cynical. It's common sense.
Pay attention to me when I'm talking to you.
I'm gonna rock the nation. Rock the nation.
Genuine, accountable, and raw. Here is Steve Gruber.
Monday, and welcome to it. I've got some stunning audio for you coming up next hour. You're going to want to hear. You know, maybe there is still hope for America. We'll find out. We'll talk about that coming up in a minute. Also this hour, Liz Peek will join us here on the program. Liz Peek, of course, from Fox News. One of my favorites, without question. And before we go much farther, let's, this whole thing with this plane being shot down over the Sinai in Egypt. All indications are that it came down as a result of an attack from ISIS. It seems that somewhere along the line, ISIS was able to get a bomb on board that Russian plane, blew it out of the sky. We've seen the signature heat source American satellites have. And now British and American undercover operatives and intelligence folks say, listen, there's ample evidence this was an ISIS bomb. In fact, it's time for America to step up. So says Congressman Mike McCall from the Homeland Security. Let's take a listen to this.
Well, I think the latest evidence we have is the black box recording itself, which indicates that there was an explosion on the aircraft. When you couple that with the satellite technology, this flash of heat on the airplane, the fact that ISIS has declared war on Russia, this was a Russian plane headed for Russia. In addition to the U.S. and UK intelligence that we've received, I think all indicators are pointing to the fact that this was ISIS putting a bomb on an airplane.
And what will the President of the United States do? Nothing to speak of. Vladimir Putin will step up, however. That is my prediction. I think Vladimir Putin will step up, so we'll keep an eye on that. And while I'm going down the aisle and gathering all this good news for you, try this on for size. The former U.S. Comptroller General says the real United States debt is more likely $65 trillion than $18 or $19 trillion like we hear about on a regular basis. Dave Walker, who headed the Government Accountability Office under Presidents Bill Clinton and George W. Bush, said that when you add up all of the nation's unfunded liabilities, the national debt more than 3 times the number that is advertised of 18, 19 trillion. $65 trillion. That's when you take every little town and county and state and municipality. You take all their unfunded liabilities and you push them into a big heap. You add the unfunded civilian and military pensions, retiree health care, the underfunding for Social Security, the additional underfunding for Medicare, various commitments and contingencies that the federal government has. The real number, he says, $65 trillion. We are flat broke, 3 times worse than you even knew. We're broke 3 times worse than you even knew. And it's growing automatically every day. The Comptroller General, by the way, is in charge of ensuring federal spending is fiscally responsible. He said the burgeoning national debt hampers the ability of the government to carry out both domestic and foreign policy initiatives. If you're broke, you can't do anything. You see, what does money give you? No. What does money give you? Hold on. It gives you options. Money gives you options to make choices, right? So if you don't keep your economy strong, and that means to be able to generate more jobs and opportunities, you're not going to be strong internationally. With regard to foreign policy, you're not going to be able to invest what you need in national defense or homeland security, and ultimately, you're not going to provide any sort of social safety net at all. Walker says this. And I agree. Americans have lost touch with reality when it comes to spending. No kidding. And then he decided to crack a joke. He called for Democrats and Republicans to put aside partisan politics and come together to fix the problem. I guess he thought he was a comedian. You can be a Democrat, you can be a Republican, you can be unaffiliated, you can do and be whatever you want. But your duty of loyalty needs to be to a country rather than to a party. Thank you. And we need to solve some large, known, and growing problems that we have. Dave Walker, you're exactly right. And I expect nothing's going to happen soon. It's Monday on the Steve Gruber Show. What are your thoughts? 888-900-9966. Now, I do have some good news today. The biggest cause of CO2 emissions reduction in America is fracking. And America's fracking natural gas boom, not solar, not wind power, not any of that nonsense. That according to a study by the Manhattan Institute. The study shows that solar power is responsible for 1% of the decline in U.S. carbon dioxide emissions, while natural gas is responsible for 20%. U.S. greenhouse gas emissions have dropped by 1,022 million tons, making them significantly lower than at the peak in 2007. For every ton of carbon dioxide cut by solar power, fracking has cut 13 tons. 13 times as much. The U.S. has reduced greenhouse gas emissions more than any other country. Did you know that? The U.S. has reduced greenhouse gas emissions more than in any other country, a fact which even the Sierra Club acknowledges, though they refuse to attribute the decline in emissions to natural gas that they oppose politically. Of course they do. Why wouldn't you? Because you're a bunch of idiots. Actual technologies at work at scale are ignored by activists in favor of their politically favored technologies, said Orrin Cass, a senior fellow at the Manhattan Institute and the study's lead author. The transition from coal to natural gas for electricity generation has probably been the single largest contributor to the largely unexpected decline in U.S. CO2 emissions, says Berkeley Earth, concurring with more formal assessments from the Department of Energy. Wind and solar power combined generated less electricity in the first half of 2015 than in the first half of 2014. And investment in those industries has been flat for 5 years domestically and, my friends, globally. Since achieving a 60% increase in 2008, growth in total wind and solar generation has been consistently slowing and investment has declined. Why? Because it's not viable. Wind and solar generation grew by only 33% in 2009, 28% in 10, 20 in 11, 19 in 2012, and just 13% in 2014. Wind and solar accounted for just 4.4 and 0.4% of all energy created in the United States in 2014. So less than 5% total. All the billions and billions of dollars spent, less than 5%. They're both inefficient and unreliable compared to traditional methods of generating energy. Inefficient and unreliable are wind and solar. Let me go over that one more time for you scoring at home. Inefficient, unreliable. What do you want to have happen when you flip your light switch? You want it to be efficient and reliable. Thank you. Ding, 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 ding. We have a winner. Johnny behind door number 3. See what they've won. It's the Steve Gruber Show.
Taking a closer look at the stories that affect you most with a big dose of common sense.
Well, I don't know why I came here tonight. I got the feeling that something ain't right. I'm so scared in case I fall off my chair. And I'm wondering how I'll get down the stairs.
All right. It's 18 after the hour. And we're shifting gears a little bit. Frank Luntz, you've seen him all over the place. It's the lines you follow, you know. It's the, positive, negative, how people feel when they're watching debates and so forth. And from Luntz Global Partners, we have David Merritt, the managing director there, joining us to talk about tomorrow's GOP debate. David, welcome to the program.
Good morning, Steve. How are you?
Well, I am doing well. You know, your company continues to get, seems to take a bigger chunk of the pie all the time. See you guys pretty much everywhere, especially at debates are good business for you guys, I'd say.
Well, hey, we want to see what voters are thinking, and no better way to do it than watch a debate with them.
Well, that's right. And in fact, you know, I saw today, it was kind of interesting that you guys are on, but I had a pop-up come out saying, hey, if you'd like to get paid to watch a debate, get a hold of us. We're Lunch Global. And I thought that was cute.
Absolutely. No, we've been in Michigan before. We've done a lot of work up there. If you go to lunchglobal.com, you can sign up, and if we're in your neck of the woods, we'll reach out to you, and hopefully you can join us.
All right, so just while we're on that topic, what's it worth? What do you pay somebody to participate in one of these groups? Let's say it's on the phone. What do you pay for something like that, or what do you pay when I see one of these panels on TV? I'm just curious.
Yeah, well, it works about the same way, basically. We're with you for the evening. We give you dinner. We pick your brain on whatever topic we're talking about, and you get $100. So it's definitely a good deal.
Yeah, that's it. So you have free food, and you get. Let me get this straight. I get dinner, $100, and I get to run my mouth. I mean, that's not so bad.
That's exactly right. You get to spout your opinion for 3 hours. It's a great deal. And the interesting thing, though, is that we get to learn exactly what voters are thinking on a second-by-second basis.
Yeah.
So when 2 weeks ago in the third debate, when Cruz and Rubio and Christie and everyone else was piling on the media, we saw an instant reaction that these voters absolutely loved.
Yeah.
Now, it's an easy target to go after the media, but when they go after each other, for instance, Jeb Bush, when he went after Marco Rubio, our voters did not like that at all. The only one who can get away with going after another candidate is Donald Trump. So these dials can actually give you an instant response of what's going on in the voters' heads.
And make no mistake, the campaigns probably have people watching you as closely as they're watching anything else because they want to know what resonates. They want to know what boomerangs. They want to know what works and what doesn't, frankly, right?
Absolutely. I mean, they're doing their own research, but at the same time, when they see us after the debates, both Democrat and Republican, it's just an instant guide to what voters are thinking in that moment. So it's definitely helpful for everyone to know where the voters stand.
Well, I've just I'm wondering what the media is going to focus on tomorrow because I just seen a headline here. Dr. Ben Carson apparently once returned a rented videotape that he did not rewind. And so there's going to be a big story on that from his childhood when he was 11. Apparently he returned a videotape he didn't rewind. My point being is Dr. Carson has taken a lot of nonsense from Politico and others this week. And again, you wonder, is the media, with all their attacks, trying to help, with their agendas? It seems that it's not working for the media. It seems that when the Republicans go out and get attacked like they did from, the last debate, that it works for the entire field. They all win.
No, that's for sure. And actually, think of this one. Ben Carson also has an overdue library book.
Well, I'm sure of it.
Really serious stuff now.
Yeah.
Let's be serious, though. In one respect, you want the media to ask tough questions. I mean, in that Fox News debate, in the first one in Cleveland, those were very, very tough questions. They asked pretty much each of them their main weakness and to try and explain away or at least address their main weakness. So I'm all for journalists asking tough questions. It's when they become opinion editors and when they become columnists and opinion columnists asking the question, that's different. And so hopefully this tomorrow night's debate will actually have substantive debate, challenging debate, but getting away from the silly stuff. And I will say this about Carson, though. Those questions about consistency matter. So while they go back 50 years and they're poking holes in this story and that story, his rise to the top of the field has been because he's been a consistent conservative who's running a very dignified campaign, and people have resonated, or that message has resonated. So I think it's okay to ask those questions, but to do it with such zeal and such zest seems to be taking it too far, and I think that's what's turning off the voters.
Well, you wonder about that, but I looked back at some questions that were, to say the least, off color. Bernard Shaw, I might remind everybody back, I think in 88, asked Michael Dukakis, the Democratic nominee, if his wife Kitty Dukakis were raped and murdered, would you then support the death penalty? I mean, there have been some questions that are pretty well off the playing field in these debates for years, and so I wonder if there's some truth to what the president said about these guys can't even take the heat from some journalists. I mean, let's be honest. These guys know what they're getting into. They know what kind of weasel questions are going to be asked, generally.
Yep, absolutely, and they're all prepared for it. So Carson, I think, will have a good answer tomorrow. Whether he can deliver it as effectively as a Ted Cruz or a Marco Rubio remains to be seen. But Rubio's going to be asked about his credit cards and his personal finances, and the common denominator between those two is that Donald Trump has been trying to make hay out of both controversies. He's the only one who is just shooting in every direction. So all of them will have an answer to their biggest glaring flaw at the moment, and we'll see if Donald Trump can expose them and hopefully score some points for him.
You know what I'd like to know? It's the Fox Business Network, and CNBC should have done the same thing. Tell me about your tax policies. Tell me about the fact that we're $19 trillion in debt, and that's just the federal government's debt. There's a lot more out there. Tell me about your plans to make the economy stronger. That would be something I'd like to hear about. Maybe not as sexy as Ben Carson, knifing a kid or not knifing a kid, and can you produce the knife? I mean, that's more interesting, I suppose, to some. But anyhow,
no, I think you're onto something. And actually, this will be the fourth debate. The first three, I think, have focused on personality. I really do think that this one will focus on policy.
And I hope you're right, David.
I'll be honest. I think the outside candidates with Fiorina and Trump and Carson may be at a disadvantage because they don't have a lot of ideas. They don't have a lot of experience with solutions.
David Merritt, we have to run, my friend, from Luntz Global Partners on the Steve Gruber Show.
Keeping you in touch with Michigan and the world.
Wow. That's right. Step right up and listen to a concerned citizen speak his piece. I tell you a little something that my daddy told me. The basic fundamentals if you want to be free. 'Cause son, there's something wrong.
All right, it's 33 after on this Monday. So I was looking at, and it takes a team here. Make no mistake. It takes both producers, Ivy and Rob, and Alex, the engineer, and it takes a whole team to create this program for you every day. There's a lot that goes into it. So we're all, I think we're all in the habit of looking around to find different stories and different points of view. And out of KHOU, Houston, Texas, Alex pointed out to me a commentary that he found on that television news from Len Cannon. Now, Len Cannon has been on the national scene from time to time. I believe he worked for CBS News. Anyhow, so he gives a commentary in KHOU territory in Houston, Texas, and I want you to listen to this because it's important, it's relevant, and it's something you maybe haven't heard before. Roll it.
I want everyone to take a good look at this little boy. That wonderful smile. His name is Tyshawn Lee. He was 9 years old, a fourth grader in Chicago, who police say was targeted by a gang and assassinated, shot down like an animal in an alley, slaughtered. Now think about your own kids. Can you imagine this happening to your baby? Horrifying. But what I don't understand is, where's the outrage over this boy's death? Where are the civil rights leaders, the demonstrations, the protests? We saw riots in cities when a white police officer shot and killed Michael Brown in Ferguson, Missouri. The Justice Department stepped in, the president weighed in, and the chants erupted, Black Lives Matter. If that is true, Chicago should be ground zero right now, with people flooding the streets saying enough is enough. Does he have to be killed by a police officer for anyone to be outraged? Look at the face again. If there were ever a time to march, to demand justice, it is now, folks. It is now.
And there it is, Len Cannon, and make no mistake, he's an African American. He's been on the national news a lot of times. So when he steps up and talks about Chicago should be ground zero right now, ground zero should be ground zero right now for what's happening. If you didn't hear this story, this little boy was lured into an alley and murdered, executed, just like Len said there, because his father apparently had some trouble with a local gang. Tyshawn Lee, 9 years old, lured to a park and murdered on Chicago's South Side because his father was involved with a gang. Now, and where are we with that? And, nothing. No Al Sharpton, no Barack Obama, no Black Lives Matter protesters. And so do Black Lives Matter only if they're shot by a white person? Is that what it comes down to? Black lives only matter if they can turn it into a political conversation? Because I think Tyshawn's life matters. Here's a little boy, and if you see his picture, little boy, he's got a suit and tie on for a school picture. He's a nice-looking young man with a big smile on his face. He's got his vest and his tie, and he looks great. And in another picture, when he graduated from, some elementary graduation, he's got his cap and gown on. They're white. And the kid, it looks like a beautiful kid. And like Len Cannon said there, can you imagine it being your child? And why does Tyshawn's life not matter? Why does the violence in the south side of Chicago and the carnage in the streets in Chicago not matter? How did we get to that point where Black lives only matter if they're killed by a white person? And instead of healing this nation and pushing forward, it seems that this president has divided us further. It would have been, he could have done great things in race relations. He could have done great things for the black community, saying, listen, if I can do this, you can do this. If I can do this, anybody can do this. If I can become president of the United States, if I can work my way to the top, then you can do this. But instead of the message being, I can do it, and you can succeed, and hard work pays off, which should be the message. The message instead is, you are a victim. You need to get even with those people. Those people are stealing from you. You should hate those people. He creates these divides, racially, socially, economically. He creates these divides in this nation. He doesn't heal and lift this nation up. He doesn't inspire this nation to come together as one. No, sir. Instead, he divides and divides and divides again. He looks for our weaknesses, not our strengths, far too often. And that will be the great failing of this presidency. The great failing of this presidency, and there are many. You could talk about foreign policy, and you could talk about the economy. But the great failing of this presidency will be the failure to lift people up, to inspire people. Because remember the night of the election in 2008? In the park in Chicago and the pillars and all of that pomp and circumstance? I mean, that was a chance to lift people up. He had a chance to do some things that maybe would never have had the chance again. And we may never for a long time. But instead, when Tyshawn Lee is murdered in cold blood, the president apparently doesn't care. It's his own hometown, allegedly. Chicago's allegedly his hometown, right? Nothing. Nobody goes to the funeral. Nobody talks about gang violence. Nobody talks about the senselessness of what's going on in Chicago. Nobody talks about the beautiful little boy, Tyshawn Lee, who's slaughtered a week ago today after being lured into an alley. The police called it an absolutely hateful killing. There's a memorial out there. By the way, speaking of Obama's economy, the feds are printing money at an unprecedented rate. Federal debt is soaring. Wages are stagnant and falling. Nearly 40% of Americans are not working. The business workforce's share of income is declining. Spending on food stamps is soaring. Student debt is soaring. Home ownership is falling. Real median family income is falling. This is what's going on with the Obama economy. Less money. First of all, less people working. People making less money for when they do go to work. Fewer people own homes. Fewer people believe that the American dream is alive. Under this president, a president that could have made a difference, a huge difference. And so I ask you, do Black Lives matter? Or only when it's politically convenient do Black Lives matter? I'm sure I'll catch some heat for this one. 41, I don't mind. I'll take it. I'm your guy. 41 after. The hotline number is 888-900-9966. It's Monday on The Steve Gruber Show.
Keeping you in touch with Michigan and the world.
You say you want a revolution. Well, you know, we all want to change the world. You tell me that it's evolution. Well, you know.
All right, and welcome back to it. Welcome your comments, by the way, at the Steve Gruber Show Facebook page or at stevegruber.com. Either place you can find plenty of room to post your comments, and we use them here whenever we can and whether they're relevant. I do have a breaking news story this morning. Apparently, Ben Carson has an overdue library book. I just want you all to know that before the debates tomorrow. Apparently, he did not return a book in the 5th grade 50 years ago or something. Anyhow, that's how relevant some of these conversations become, it seems, around these presidential candidates. I wonder why the media was never so curious about, Barack Obama locking up all of his records from college and so forth. Why we can't see anything he did in college. His grades, the papers he wrote, nothing. Seems odd, doesn't it? Our next guest, Liz Peek, one of my favorites, of course, columnist for Fox News and the Fiscal Times. Liz, welcome back to the program.
Good morning. Thanks for having me.
Glad to have you here. The big battle right now between the FBI and the administration is James Comey. He just won't sit still and behave himself, apparently.
No, he's in hot water with the administration because he tells the truth about crime and law enforcement and our prison population. Unfortunately, these are important topics, and the administration, and by the way, some politicians running for office like Hillary Clinton and even Carly Fiorina have really misconstrued the truth about not only law enforcement. Of course, the big issue there is whether cops are sitting in their patrol cars and sort of dumbing down their enforcement because they've come under such a glare of publicity, and they're all worried about the so-called YouTube effect, that they're caught on camera doing something aggressive with a criminal, and that goes viral, and, their job is threatened. But there's sort of two tracks here. The other issue is who's in our prisons, and criminal justice reform has taken on real momentum, but it's largely based on lies. And the lie is that most people are in prison, and the growth of our prison population comes from nonviolent drug offenders who were locked up because of tougher sentencing laws, and that really disadvantaged people of color. And the truth is, only about 10% of our prison inmates are in federal prisons, which do enforce the drug laws. 90% of the prison population is state prisons, and most of those are violent offenders. It is true that in the federal prisons, about half are in prison for drug-related offenses, but mostly they're traffickers. They have pled down from higher charges to drug trafficking charges. And so the whole notion, when Obama went out to visit a prison in, I think it was Utah, he talked about, therefore, but the grace of God go I.
Right.
It just isn't true. It's not like they're teenagers who had one reefer who are in prison. It's a fallacy.
You mean one doobie didn't land them in federal prison for the rest of their lives?
I mean,
I'm shocked.
The sad thing is this is kind of caught on because, of course, it's a way to go into black communities and sound sympathetic with the charges coming from those black communities that, too many men of color have been locked up. As Comey would say, and did say in a really eloquent speech to the University of Chicago Law School, the only reason that black communities are safer today than they were 20 or 30 years ago is all those drug gangs were put in prison. And, for people living in these communities, this is a serious issue that their voices really are not heard, the ones who really want law and order on their streets.
Yeah, I wonder about some of these things, and you talk about the crime rates and what serious sentencing has done. You look at Baltimore, for example. Baltimore's crime rate, and Martin O'Malley was the guy behind this, really. They had a strict war on crime, and they incarcerated a lot of people, and the crime in Baltimore went down dramatically until 2015, where crime in Baltimore has skyrocketed because of they've relaxed on a lot of these, I guess, in enforcement and so on and so forth. Strong penalties keep America pretty safe, whether you like it or not. America, the crime rate, as you've mentioned, 30, 40 years declining, the violent crime rate in America.
Yeah, which is huge. And remember, I live in New York City, and it used to be that in broad daylight, people were getting mugged in all over the city. And, that just isn't the case now. But we have a progressive mayor who is predictably instructing the police department to ease up on so-called stop and frisk and other aggressive measures, and sure enough, the homicide rate is starting to go back up again. I think
let me ask you this.
There were 3 people shot near Penn Station.
Right, and there's a manhunt underway right now because of that. But I don't know how long you've lived in New York City, but, I mean, in 1975, I didn't live there, but I've seen pictures of Times Square in 1975. It's a different city today.
Yeah.
Times Square was a cesspool.
Yeah.
In 1975. Today, you've got the big, screens and all the advertisements. It's a gathering place. It's the epicenter. So the world has changed. America is a safer place today than it's been any time in my lifetime. And anybody that tells you differently has no idea what they're talking about.
Well, that's the point, isn't it? That they don't know what they're talking about. And the sad thing is, the reversal of these policies, without a doubt, will most impact the communities that these people aim to represent and to help. That is to say, the minority communities. That's where, by the way, when de Blasio in New York City started to back off stop and frisk, some of the protests came from black communities who said, wait a minute, we don't want these guys, these drug gangs coming back to our projects and hanging out in our neighborhoods. This is going to make our lives less safe. And, undoubtedly eventually that will prove to be the case. And that's a tragedy.
Well, it is. Telling the truth, though, I mean, it has no place in modern politics. Right. I mean, I'm telling you, Liz, no place for telling the truth. Appreciate your time, Liz Peek. Always a pleasure.
Say, thanks for having me. Take care.
There you have it. Liz Peek, columnist for Fox News and the Fiscal Times, and she's in New York City right now. And there is a manhunt underway. 3 people shot there, at least 1 killed. New York subway shooting near Penn Station, like she said. 1 killed, 2 wounded as of about 5 minutes ago. It's 52 after. It's the Steve Gruber Show.